Welcome back, everyone. In this video, I've got a couple new things that I want to share with you. So, first order of business, we're filming in a different room today. I'm not in my office, and I want to show this off because we have new windows and I also have new lights. So this is actually a really cool opportunity to get to test some of these out together. Some of you may remember a little while ago when I did a video covering some new lights by Zhiyun, and these are really cool. So I did a video and we covered the first two lights that they introduced, which was the G60, which was a small, tiny 60-watt lamp. And then we also had the X100, which was slightly larger. It incorporates a battery. It's an awesome portable light. Both those are very cool. They're low-powered lights. Well, Zhiyun has a new light that they've introduced. This is the Molus G200. So I want to take you through a few applications of what these are really cool for. I do want to note that I'm actually using one right now. In fact, let's turn this out. I'm going to show you the difference. So this is with the light. Here's without. So we're solving kind of a big problem here. I am backlit, and many of you probably have this problem if you're trying to shoot video in a house, or let's say you're even on a Zoom call. Let's get these back on. So yeah, that is one light that we're using. So these are 200-watt lamps. They actually have a power boost mode that will get you up to 300 watts output, and they're really small. They're really lightweight. I really like these. So let's get into this. So when you pick these up, they're going to come in this travel bag, which is very cool because you have a case that you can keep them in when you're traveling or not using them. Inside the bag, you're going to find a bunch of different things. There's a big reflector. This is going to amplify and give you more lumens of light when you need it at its brightest. You also have a power cable. There's the G200 lamp itself, and then you also have a controller, and this is where you're actually going to control things like the brightness and the color temperature. So these lights are actually bicolor lamps. You can get up to 200 watts output. They are dimmable. So the way this works is you have the lamp, you have a second controller, and it really is pretty easy. So the second controller is very simple. There's a fan in the back. On the top, you'll see the on and off switch, and on the front of the controller, you're going to have two dials. Now this is super easy to use. The knob on the left controls the brightness. The one on the right controls the color temperature. Just by turning these, you're able to fine tune either one of those things. If you want to jump to a different setting, you can push them in and they will just round robin through the nearest setting. So for instance, the dimmer is going to go from 0 to 20 to 40 to 60 to 80 to 100, so 20% increments, and then also the color temperature does the same thing. When we look at the specs, these lights are very impressive. So first of all, we've got a color temperature range of 2700 Kelvin up to 6500 Kelvin. In terms of brightness, they are very impressive. So the illuminance at 6500 Kelvin at 100% brightness at a distance of 1 meter comes out to 9,460 lux. The operation temperature on these, and of course this depends on how bright you're running the light and for how long, anywhere from -10 degrees Celsius to around 40 degrees Celsius. So the cooling system is very well designed in these. Now, another thing that I want to point out is how these lamps handle heat. So there are actually two fans. You have one fan in the lamp itself. You have a second fan in the controller. One thing that I'm the most impressed with about these lights is how quiet they are. They really are adequate for video. What's cool is when you turn it on the first time, it's cool, so the fan probably won't engage until it needs to, and as it does, you don't notice anything. And that actually is a really big deal if you're filming video like the one I'm filming now. You don't want noise near the microphone. You don't want to hear the fans, and that's actually a really big deal, and they handle it really well. Now, as I mentioned, these are 200-watt lamps, but what's really cool is you can actually boost them up to an additional 100 watts to get 300 watts of output, and you're going to do this by simply grabbing both the knobs and pushing them in at the same time and holding them, and after about 2 seconds, it goes into the boost mode or max mode as it reads on the screen. This is actually really handy when you need a little bit more output, and it makes these lights extremely versatile. Now, I also want to talk about how versatile these are in terms of design. You can really do a lot with these. So first of all, you have a standard stand mount with a locking pin. So you pretty much put this on anything. There is a second locking pin, which is going to unlock the rotation. You can actually rotate this 180 degrees. So if you want to do something like bounce it off of a wall, or you want to light something from above coming down like a table, it's really easy to get it into position. You also have an umbrella mount if you want to use an umbrella for some kind of bounce or diffusion. And speaking of modifiers and diffusion, what I really love about this is a standard Bowens mount. So Zhiyun have some lighting modifiers that you can get through them, but it'll work with anything because it's just a standard mount. So that is very cool. So let's talk a little bit about applications for continuous lighting. Video is going to be the most obvious. As I mentioned, I'm using these lights right now. I really like the other two lights that Zhiyun did that I did the video on a while back. And if you haven't seen that, I will link it up here in the show description. So make sure you check that out. They're really cool lights. They are are less power than these, and if 60 watts is really all you need, I think the G60 and the X100 are both excellent. In terms of portability, what you can do with those, I was able to do some lighting outdoors even with them, and I really like those lights. However, there are applications where you're going to need a little more power, and that's where 200 watts really comes in handy. So for example, in the past, I haven't done a lot of filming in this front room. First of all, we needed new windows drastically. Now that those have been replaced, this actually does make a cool environment to shoot in. The problem that you have is if you're not going to use artificial lighting at all, you're going to have a lot of problems with light changing through the windows. So what I will do is I will generally set my exposure based on what's going on outside so it doesn't blow out, and then I will light accordingly. And this is where having brighter lights comes in really handy. And I am using modifiers on these right now. These are lanterns that are Bowens mount that I put them in, and they just give you a nice soft diffusion. They disperse the light evenly across the room, and you really can't do this kind of setup without these. And the reason I mention this is not that this is something that you would use for video all the time, but there's a lot of people out there that do a lot of Zoom meetings and Zoom calls. And if that's you, you probably have some kind of office, I'm guessing, that makes you backlit, and it's really hard to work with. You have to turn around, you have to situate and light funny. But with something like this, these are small enough and discreet enough to where you can kind of put them up, leave them up, and they're not in the way. That's something that's very cool, and they get the job done, and you get a really good natural look in the end. So I'm really loving these for video, and I actually want to do a lot more filming up in this front part of the studio rather than just be in the back cave all the time. So that's one application that I really love. And another application that I really like these in, believe it or not, is still photography. Now, when we think of still photography, generally we can use an on-camera flash or an off-camera flash, which is great because it just gives you a burst of really bright light, and they'll go brighter usually than 200 watts because you're not leaving them on continuously. You're just firing them when the shot is taken. But one of the things that I actually like to do, particularly with this project I've been doing recently with a lot of macro work, I've been shooting a lot of watches, and doing macro work, I like to be able to model the light and have what I'm seeing is what I get in the end. And these are really fantastic for that. The other thing is you don't need crazy lighting setups, especially when you're dealing with a small space that's something like macro. So one light will do it. And so that's a really cool application for something like this. They would easily work for portraits. Also situations where, a lot of people do things like weddings where you have a still shooter and then you have somebody doing video at the same time. So being able to light a room with stuff like this is really a cool option to have. I mean, come on, this is what it looks like in my studio. I'm able to get that on video. Now, also impressive to me is when you add up how good these lights are and how versatile they are, we look at the price point, and Zhiyun has these right now well under $400. That is an incredible value. And let me just say, because I've done this for 15 years and I've actually been doing video for 10 years before that, back when I started out, lights came in two flavors. Either one, they were really expensive, or two, they were really bad. Even the lights that I bought when I moved into this studio, which was just 2.5 years ago, they were actually over 3 times as expensive as one of these lamps. This is a really big deal because that stuff can add up so quick. You also have to figure in you're going to have to buy stands, and if you want to buy modifiers. And so to be able to get a light that is this quality for this kind of price, it's just absolutely mind-blowing. So check these out. I think you will be impressed. I've got a link in the show description. If you have not seen my other video on the other offerings that Zhiyun has, please check that out. If you have any questions, drop them below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, later.